Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session on Leganto engagement. We are recording the session and we'll share the recording with you after the presentation. So in case you want to rewatch any parts of this session or share it with the people that you work with, you'll have that available to you. A few logistical things before we get started. You are all muted, so you don't need to worry about accidentally interrupting the session. If you have any questions or comments for our presenters, please put those questions into the Q&A. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. Also, if you have any technical challenges with WebEx, please feel free to put a note in the chat for me. I'm your host, Jessie Ransom, so I can help you troubleshoot any issues that you may encounter with the session. With that, I'm very pleased to introduce Amy Leakopoulos, who is the Manager of Campus Engagement for Ex Libris. Over to you, Amy.
All right. Thanks, Jessie. Before we get started, I'd just like to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our first ever Fireside Chat here on behalf of the Campus Engagement team. We're really excited to have with us three panelists here today to talk a bit about their Leganto experience, specifically adoption, outreach, and ongoing promotion, and we'll showcase their expertise here in a bit. As I get started, I'd just like to welcome again my colleague. I'm joined here by Betsy Host Garza. So Betsy, I'll hand it over to you for this brief intro, and we'll also introduce our panelists as well. So thanks again for joining everyone, and we look forward to continuing our chat here today together.
Thanks, Amy. So welcome, everyone. I know I have a lot of folks from the schools I work with across North America here. So I'm really excited to help present this today with our esteemed panelists. I hope everyone gets something out of it. We will definitely be following up after the session as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to introduce herself and then pass the baton onward.
Hi, I'm Erin Beach. I'm the Course Reserves Coordinator for Northeastern University in Boston. We implemented Leganto in 2018, so we've been doing it for a couple of years. And fun fact, I appeared as a contestant on Jeopardy!
That is interesting. Always learning something new.
Okay, Evie?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Evie Cordell. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am the first-year experience and undergraduate engagement librarian in the Research and Instruction Department at Northeastern University. My fun fact is I own I think right now around 300 pieces of vintage and vintage reproduction clothing dating from around 1920 to 1960.
Wow, that's really interesting. You'll have to tell me more after the chat. I'd love to hear more about all of those pieces that you have as well. And with that, we'll pass it on to James. James.
Hello, my name is James Pape, and I'm the Access Services and Outreach Librarian at the University of Mary Washington. We started using Leganto in 2019 at UMW. And a fun fact about me is recently I got rid of my cell phone completely. I'm now just a landline person because I'm tired of cell phones.
Wow, that is an interesting fact. Most people, I would say, have a smartphone today. So hopefully that transition has been nice for you to go without a cell phone. I'm sure you have a lot less distraction from day to day. So with that, we'll get started here again with our Leganto questions. We have quite a few. For those of you that are joining us, feel free to participate via the chat today as we talk with our panelists. So to provide your own tips, tricks, perhaps questions as well. We'll be monitoring that throughout the session. And as we get started, I'd just like to start with a general question here for Erin, Evie, James. How would you describe your Leganto adoption journey? If you'd be willing to share a bit about what that's entailed, we look forward to hearing more.
Sure. So our adoption journey started in 2018. That's when we implemented. And we decided to go with the sort of pilot course format, which meant that instead of a giant rollout all at once, we started with just a handful of courses where we got in touch with certain faculty who we thought would be amenable to the process, kind of got in touch with them, explained what it was, and had them use it during fall 2018. And then we sent like a series of surveys at the end of fall to see how that went and kind of assess what they liked and didn't like about it. And from there, we kind of gradually increased things like our web presence. We, from a course reserves perspective, the reserve site and the form where you submit your reserve request had information about, this is Leganto, it's our new kind of upcoming thing, click here to try it out. So we're just trying to get people to try it at first. It's not a mandatory kind of all at once thing. And so that was fall of 2018. And then in April, we presented at a sort of campus-wide event that was called Texpo, which is about using technology in education. And we had kind of a joint presentation about affordable course materials and about Leganto and how Leganto could, expand students and faculty's use of materials that the library already owns, already has licenses for, and that would help the students with more affordable materials and more connection with the library. So that presentation kind of helped expand the word to more people in different parts of the campus. And we also continued to increase our web presence. We had a series of webinars aimed at faculty for getting started. We created a number of training materials and kind of consistently tried to increase the number of courses that were using it and keep track of how that was going. In 2020, Northeastern adopted a new learning management system. We transferred from Blackboard to Canvas, and we really pushed to make Leganto kind of a part of that new training experience for the Canvas course management system. So anyone who was kind of getting started with Canvas, we wanted Leganto to be an immediate kind of part of that menu, and any training that's going to faculty and students to use the new course management system, we wanted Leganto to be a part of that. So we were really kind of successful in really spreading it out in that way. So in 2020, we saw a definite surge in usage, and it's becoming pretty much the main course reserves system at this point.
Oh, that's interesting. And James, would you be willing to share a bit about your experience as well?
Yeah. We started a year later. We went in summer of 2019. We decided to purchase Leganto at UMW and roll out a pilot for the fall of 2019. And it worked really well because we handpicked our 10 professors we were going to do the pilot with, except that only half of them actually did anything with it. So, it was a little rough in the beginning. And we decided, even though since it was a little rough, we were still going to push forward, and we rolled it out to the entire campus in spring of 2020. And everyone knows what happened in spring of 2020. The pandemic hit. So we were lucky that we had actually rolled it out, though, because then we were able to, Leganto was already in every single LMS. All the courses were already in the LMS, which is Canvas. And it helped us pivot really quickly and put all of our online resources into their LMS. And for us, it was very beneficial. And I'm glad we went to Leganto as quickly as we did, because this last year would have been really hard if we would not have everything in their Canvas pages right now.
Great.
That's
Thank
great
you.
to think about. I can only imagine that type of, I would say, timing and working in higher ed during COVID-19. And I know this will pop up here later as we talk more about that experience. I'll hand that over to you, Betsy.
Sure. So I think you've already shared a little bit of this, but maybe you could expand a little bit more. We're going to start with Erin, and then Evie, and then James again, and just ask a little bit about what advice you have for our libraries as they strive to increase Leganto adoption, term over term or year over year.
So yeah, I would say definitely introduce it in stages, gradually. Make sure you get certain sort of pockets of people used to the idea, and then kind of push for it harder. For example, like we gradually replaced the reserve request form with just submitting via Leganto, but that was kind of a 2-year process. We let people who still were really attached to that form, use it, but had the big, the big notice, we're going to Leganto by this date, please be sure to have checked it out by then. And so let them kind of see that for a while before you eventually take it away. And in terms of just increasing adoption, it might be helpful to just, from an analytics point of view, keep track of your usage, set if you have certain goals, set adoption goals, like we want, 50 courses by this date, figure out what it is you can do to meet those goals, whether it's increasing promotion around campus, or if it's just people need more training. You can create surveys to get feedback from faculty who are using it. But yeah, I would say definitely set goals and then see how you can meet them in terms of adoption.
Thank you. Evie?
Yeah, so I have two things. I think the first thing is I work with a lot of the other research and instruction librarians to kind of keep them up to date on Leganto, and then for them to share that with their incoming faculty and instructors who may not be using it yet. And the second thing is to find your champions. So for me, I work with the writing program, and I have a couple like really heavy users of Leganto in the writing program. And I use them as a way of promotion to talk about it within their staff meetings and to get other people to start using it. So it slowly builds to where maybe you have 5 professors, and then once they start talking about it and sharing how easy it is to use, then you have 20, 30, and so on.
Yeah, and my 10 cents here would be that to try different things. Don't be afraid. If one way doesn't work, try another. Like if the faculty aren't willing to embrace Leganto, use the students to help you embrace Leganto. That's what we did at UMW. So, don't be afraid to try different things.
And I've noticed here that everyone's talking a bit about just relationships with faculty, with students, and Leganto. Could we talk a bit about just, has Leganto changed your relationship with faculty and students? And if so, how?
Yeah, I would say at UMW, it has really changed our relationship with students and faculty, but 2 different ways. The students here at UMW, I think they've become more empowered with Leganto, because what we've done here at UMW is we've actually asked the students to be our champion. We started first working with faculty through the pilot program. Like I said, half of them kind of like jumped out. So we decided to just start promoting Leganto to the students, promoting to the students that they could have PDFs and ebooks and everything available in their Canvas course pages. And they loved the idea. So they came back and said, hey, how do we get this to happen in all our classes? And we started saying, talk to your faculty members. So we empowered the students. And as we empowered the students, I think the faculty became more and more aware, because the faculty kind of turned a blind eye after so many emails from me. But the students, they understand the students are the most important thing on this campus. And when every single student in the class is emailing the faculty or talking to the faculty or Zooming with the faculty saying, the library told me I can have this book for free on, in Leganto, why don't you make that happen? Then we quickly get a request from the faculty member saying, please put this in Leganto.
To build on that, exactly. I come from it from the faculty standpoint. So when I'm talking to an instructor, I show them like how easy it is to add their course materials. And I think with COVID and not having as easy access to our physical collection, that was a big selling point as well. So students don't necessarily have to purchase course packets. We don't have as many instructors uploading PDFs that they've made, that they're using the library's course materials directly. And it's just easier for students to access them than having like a blurry PDF that somebody's uploaded, to having the actual course material from the library that they're reading instead.
And from the faculty communication perspective, it's for certain classes, it's become a lot more streamlined because there's sort of discussion and notes features within each Leganto list that you can kind of cut out a lot of extraneous emails back and forth when you're processing one list. So instead of it, going out as a course reserve request and then back and forth and a bunch of emails, they have kind of one place to look at their list and then see the status of everything as it's been updated. A lot of it is automated, but then if they have any like actual questions they need, there are features to add comments and discuss like right on a citation or just on the list itself. So I think that it's been helpful for communication for people who have really taken advantage of that aspect of the interface.
Great. So I know we've talked a lot about that type of engagement. So kind of tagging on that, what communication channels have been most effective when you've been promoting Leganto to your administrators, your faculty, and your students? And we'll start with you, Evie.
I think that, you know, we've done workshops and we've made promotional materials, and our workshops have been so attended, but I think maybe the best form of communication has just been general word of mouth and people using it and kind of telling other people that they're using it. For me, using my position as a liaison to various departments to actually get in those department meetings and doing demos to a whole department versus trying to do a workshop where I might not get as many people using it.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. We tried workshops, and we're still trying workshops, and we're still trying classes. But the best way that we've found so far is get your liaisons to talk to the department heads or the professors that they've been dealing with for years, and go in. And well, I guess you can't go in anymore, but on Zoom, sit down and talk to the faculty member and explain to them the benefit of it and how this will actually make their life easier, because the students will love them when they make this happen. And then the last thing is if you can, get your director fully on board, because your director has communication channels that I don't have. And they can communicate to the really higher ups in the university. And I feel like that kind of greases the wheels with all the department heads when the director starts talking to them. But liaisons, I think, are one of the biggest benefits.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having liaisons and just anybody else on campus, you can kind of spread it, creates a kind of viral kind of interaction with the information. Just kind of from a personal perspective, I would say, as the reserves coordinator, use the channels you already have and that you already know work. So for example, I'll send out kind of per semester, kind of an email blast that gives all the updates about the current semester's reserves. So I've used that to insert information about Leganto, and then pretty much all of those people on that list who I regularly communicate with, who have course materials, will see it. And, if they don't pay attention to it one semester, maybe they'll see it the next semester. So just kind of consistent communication with through the channels you've already sort of taken advantage of, I would say.
Great, and that's also a perfect segue to one of our next questions here, as we've talked about different channels and some of the tips you've hinted at so far. What advice do all of you have for librarians that are really just thinking about how to tell their colleagues, both in the library and outside of the library, what Leganto is, what it does, and the overall impact it can have on them?
So I often use the term reading list, although I also say that it's not just a reading list, because you can add a variety of other things to it. And when I kind of explain that it's not just relegated to just library materials, that you can add outside sources, they get really interested in that. I also encourage people to kind of think outside the box. So like our Leganto lists no longer live just for in the classroom. Like we have Leganto lists that are in our research subject guides, or lib guides, so we might showcase 3 different resources, and then we have a Leganto list linking out to all the other resources. So our students, our faculty, our instructors, our staff are not just encountering Leganto lists within a classroom, they're encountering them in a variety of other ways, which can really help with communication.
Yeah, and just back up a little bit, when we first implemented, one of the first things the sort of small group of us that were working on Leganto did was create a presentation to the all library staff meeting to kind of get everyone acclimated to what it was. And then in the ensuing months, kind of set up either one-on-one consultations or invited library staff to webinars that might be designed for faculty, but also helpful for librarians, to kind of try to get all of those R&I librarians on board who can then kind of be ambassadors to their faculty and their students. So from the sort of earliest stage, what you want to do is get the librarians that you communicate with on board with it, and then they'll kind of communicate their expertise with who they know, and it can kind of go on like that.
Yeah, I would continue with that, saying that show them what it does, because I can sit here and explain all day long. And like Evie, we use the term library reading list. That's what everybody knows here on campus. We don't ever say the word Leganto. We say library reading list everywhere, because that's a concept they can actually understand. They understand what a reading list is. So my goal always as the outreach person here, I don't even start explaining. I just show it to them. I'm like, this is what it does. And usually once I show them, they're like, oh, well, it does this, this, and this, and then the communication starts. So I always start with showing them, not even explaining, just show it to them first.
Great. So great to know how you communicate with the faculty and the students about the value of Leganto. How do you discuss the value, the impact of Leganto with administrators?
Yeah, this was probably the biggest concern for me when I first saw Leganto back in early 2019. I was like, I want to have this. This sounds awesome, because our reserve collection had gone from like 30 materials to 300 in like a year and a half, because we had started really promoting reserves. And I thought Leganto was the next step. And so far, I think I've been right. So we're really happy to have Leganto, but I had to get the money to be able to purchase it. That was the number one concern I had. And we all have really tight budgets. So kind of on a wing and a prayer, I kind of pitched it to administration, and they said, sure, this sounds great. Let's try it for 1 year. And then I started talking to our person who does all our stats, and it was our collection librarian. And we figured out how we could calculate all the downloads, clicks, requests, everything within Leganto, what happens in Leganto, all the stats. And then we translated that into how much money was saved by, in theory, if you have 30 students in a class and all 30 went to this PDF that we put up there online, look at how much money we saved when it comes to ILO, or when it comes to other avenues like the student having to actually purchase the material. So that's kind of how we've validated Leganto each year now, is because we're saving students money, and that's a big thing here at UMW. So we can show actual money being saved by having Leganto and using Leganto.
Thank you. And then Evie?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of first-year programs. In particular, I work very closely with the administration of a program called NUN, and this is a first-year program where first-year students, we send them abroad for the first semester. So when I started working with them, there are 40 different sections of this class where I'm the librarian in it. They were kind of iffy on Leganto, and if it was actually, the students were actually using it. But so at the end of kind of the semester, we went back and we looked at it, and we really used the analytics tools to see what students were using, how many clicks. And what we found were that, this is 1,100 students that are in 9 different sites across the world. They were using it extensively to access library materials. So not just from, the library standpoint that we have all these students in just one program using the library's materials, but from the NUN program, that the students were actually using, library resources and not the general, just, Google, but they were actually finding more relevant resources for their research.
That sounds fascinating. I would love to know more about that type of course, sending especially students abroad to see the impact that would have for their first term. It sounds like a really unique experience for them. And thank you both for sharing a bit about that, just the analytics features and things that you've done to really showcase the impact and have these conversations with administrators. I'm sure that many of our sites will have additional questions, perhaps for you, about the how-tos as well, which we can talk about here later. As we just think about next steps or just additional questions we have here, I know we've talked a bit about just the remote working environment. I think, James, you were the first person to hint at this, what 2020 was for all of us, we all know. And it kind of continues here as well. What advice do you have for sites as they promote Leganto while working remotely? What would you like to share?
I would say, if anything, remote learning has given a boost to sort of our ability to promote Leganto, because it's kind of tailor-made for a situation where you can access it without being on site. You can access it from anywhere. So any student who isn't able to come into the library would be able to log on and see, well, what does the library have for my course that I'm not going to be able to get into, because there's kind of, reserves is a pretty big operation at our location, and so it's a pretty big blow to suddenly have months where you're not able to come up to the desk and get those things. And so we're really kind of increasing the amount of electronic materials we have, the streaming materials. We're replacing as much as possible that we had in physical reserve with electronic. And so kind of marketing that to faculty and students as, here's your e-reserves. It's really easy. Just go to this list and everything we have, here's the link to it. So that was actually pretty amazing to have Leganto already going into that sort of forced remote environment. And just going forward, I would say, you can still do a lot of the stuff that you used to do on site. You can still do webinars where you're showcasing the product or just answering questions. You can still have information sessions. You can do one-on-one consultations for students or faculty who need it, either via phone or like a Microsoft Teams meeting. We've definitely added a lot to the website, like the reserves website and other locations, to tell students and faculty all the places they can go during this sort of remote period. We also have added a sort of a contact us survey at the bottom of the page where they can indicate how they'd like to communicate, whether it's email or if they want to have a one-on-one. And they can kind of follow up with us about any Leganto questions they have.
And building on what Erin said, Northeastern also has 7 sites around global university sites. We're the only physical library for all of Northeastern and all of our global campuses. So Leganto has really allowed us to offer library resources to all those campuses who are right now remote as well. So that's been really helpful, I think, especially with COVID. Not only can we offer our Boston students, but also those that are in Seattle, London, and Canada access to material.
Yeah, and I usually come at this from a promotion part of Leganto because everybody manages Leganto a little differently, and we've only really managed Leganto while working remotely. So we're looking forward to managing it a different way. But I always think about the promotion part, and just to explain the value of Leganto. Just explain what value Leganto is. And like I say, always show them how to use it. And one of the key things for us when it came to promoting Leganto is as I said before, we use the word Leganto for the whole first pilot program. And we just found out that name meant nothing to anyone. So when you're doing promotion, make sure you choose like your branding and everything and how you're going to promote it to something your campus actually understands and is used to using. Like for us, it was reading list. So we've kind of used that the most, and they understand that terminology, and that helped us when we came to promoting Leganto.
Excellent. So I think this is actually my favorite question, this next one, just because it has to do with something I think we get asked all the time. People tell us we're Zoomed out, maybe we've switched to LMS, and they've had so much training and they don't want to learn anything new. So we would love to hear your top 3 tips, your go-to training tips for teaching professors how to use Leganto.
So we've created a lot of materials over the past couple years in different formats to kind of reach faculty. One thing we've done, I know that Evie mentioned the webinar series we did, and although that wasn't particularly well attended, it does give a very sort of a recording of a deep dive into the system, which you can save and send to people. So if someone really wants kind of the full picture, they can watch that video of us, doing a kind of live screencast of exactly how you can start a list, work on the list, submit the list, all those sort of ins and outs of that. For people who maybe don't want to sit down for all of that or don't have the time, we have some other materials like a shorter, 5 to 7 minute video that's just, here's how you get started from Canvas. And it's just, on the screen saying, click here, this is how you do it. We also have it in the format of we kind of created a reading list within Leganto, but the list itself is kind of training material for the instructors. So it's kind of laid out in sections in the way that Leganto, the Leganto interface works. And they click a section, it'll show them, here's the next step. So if they're that kind of learner and they want to look at images, they can use that. And again, we also have, that option for just contact us if they really just need to talk to somebody on the phone about how to use it. So I would say just try different formats for training, give people a chance to sign up for prearranged webinars. And if they can't make it, you can always send them the recordings later. But yeah, definitely have different forms of kind of small training materials that are easy to use.
Yeah, I would say at UMW, we created Leganto videos like Northeastern, and we created training guides that we put on our, famous lib guides that every library has. But I think one of the key things for us when it comes to training, teaching professors was to make sure that the liaisons understood what Leganto was and have them directly contact them. I mean, because if you have 100 or 1,000 professors contacting one reserve specialist, it gets overwhelming. So I think you have to have the librarians understand what's going on because they're going to ask them questions. And I think that's the most important thing. We can put all the videos, all the training guides out there we want, but people are burnt out. So we kind of want to have them be able to ask one person, have that one person that they trust understand how to use it. Even if it's something as simple as turn on your library reading list. That's all you have to do. Turn it on and it'll work. I think that's the most beneficial thing.
I agree with everything that everyone has said. For myself as a liaison, I like to offer one-on-one sessions to instructors that might be struggling. The other thing that I've kind of put together is like, if they can just give me 5 to 10 minutes, I can give them the quick overview and have them working in it. And that's how long it takes to set it up. Like, you only need about 5 minutes to show them. And working with the other research and instruction librarians and liaisons to kind of be able to do the same thing. They don't need to know every single thing about how Leganto works and all the tiny intricacies, but being able to just do a 5-minute quick overview of how to add a couple resources. And I think that's enough to get faculty and instructors to start using it.
Great. Would you mind if I just followed up on that question with you just for a second? So if folks have 5 minutes, do you just have a couple of things off the top of your mind that have resonated best with your faculty? Any tips?
Yeah.
Some of the best.
So I very quickly show them how to start a Leganto list, and then I show them how to add a book or an article and how to add something off the web. So if they're adding a link from Amazon or a particular site, I just show them those couple of things, because really once you start using it and you've seen the basic mechanics, then you can probably figure out the rest. So really I show them how to start it, I show them how to add a couple things, and that's it if I have like the quick 5-minute Leganto tour.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
That's great. This next question, I'm going to shift gears a bit and talk about just challenges we've experienced so far. It's a 2-part question. So I'd just like to ask the first part just being, what has been your biggest obstacle that you faced to date in terms of faculty engagement, number 1? And then that second part being, how have you overcome this?
Well, I'll start this. I hinted towards it earlier. Our biggest obstacle was faculty not buying in. The faculty just didn't want us in their LMS. They didn't want us to be, there was a perception that the library was going to go into Canvas and, I don't know, change grades or something. I don't know what it was, but they just didn't buy in. And that has been something that's kind of happened sometimes at UMW. So how we overcame this is we just went to the student population, the same thing we did with reserves. And we have used the student population to feed into the faculty. And the other way we've overcome the challenge is we have a really good reserve specialist, and she does the long email at the beginning of the semester, and she constantly reaches out to them throughout the semester. And it's a lot of hands-on, almost holding hands kind of process. And the more we walk the faculty through it, like if we show them twice, usually it sticks. The first time it just kind of like falls off their radar, but the second time, the second semester, it seems that they get it. And then what has happened with the students pressuring them to put more and more materials on reserve, which become available in Leganto in the LMS, with that happening, and with more and more faculty slowly adopting this e-resources and open education resources, it has almost become like this snowball rolling down the hill. And I have a lot of fear that we might not be able to keep up in the future, because currently we're doing everything for the faculty. And we're trying to move on to the next step of saying, how can we get faculty to actually put in all their own stuff? But I think that was step one, was for us helping them. And that's how we've overcome the obstacle of faculty engagement. Step two will be letting them not have the training wheels anymore. So.
On that, before we jump over to Evie, I just wanted to ask James, you've talked about just reaching out to students, working with students directly. How did you start that process? How did you determine where to start to engage with students?
Well, we have a very engaging student population. They live on campus and they're really great. And they are empowered. They really are, by the entire campus. And they would come into the library and say, hey, I need this, this, and this. And we'd explain to them that it's available, but the faculty members haven't been engaged with us. They haven't made it available. So we kind of put the onus on the faculty. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it on every campus, but we kind of put the fault on the faculty. We said, we have the resources, we have everything available, you just need to do it. So we talked one-on-one with endless, and we still do. Every time freshman orientation comes on, every time we do a table somewhere, like engagement across the campus, any outreach stuff, we always start and tell the students what we have available to them. And it's up to them to basically make it happen. And it's just one-on-one all the time with the student population.
Well, thanks for sharing. That's really interesting. And I'd love to go back to that question again about obstacles, to hear a bit from Evie as well as Aaron here about the biggest challenge you faced to date and how you've overcome that in terms of faculty engagement.
I think one of the hardest things is to get faculty to learn yet another piece of new software, especially at Northeastern, where we switched from Blackboard to Canvas. So they were having to learn a whole new LMS, the learning management system. And it's like, oh, wait, now we have to learn another piece. That can be a huge hurdle and a challenge just to get people to use it. I think that one of the ways we overcome is just have it directly integrated into Canvas. So, we have the Leganto button there, and we can tell faculty, you don't have to go out of Canvas. You can use it right in within the system. And like Aaron was talking about, how we were a part of that, I can't remember the name of it, the Text Expo, I believe, and showing them how to use that all at the same time. So they're not thinking about it as separate pieces of software, but something they use all together.
Yeah, and I would say you'll have a different relationship with different faculty. So some might be a lot more hesitant to wanting to use it or explore it. And for those people, maybe you can put a little bit more effort into kind of working on their list for them. So maybe there's more hand-holding for some people than others, and some might come around quicker than others. But yeah, just whether it's the reserves coordinator, the liaison, whoever's working with the faculty on the list, be prepared to sort of own Leganto, to be in there in the list with them, and working on it. And I would also say, maybe in some cases, like show, don't tell. Like, say you have an instructor sending you emails with just lots of citations of things they want. If you have the time, maybe turn around and say, hey, I've put everything you sent me into a Leganto list. Do you want to take a look at it? If you want to use this, this is, what your students will see. And so you can kind of, if you do a little bit of that work, then, and sort of make it look as good as possible, you can focus on the positives, like this is, this will improve access for your students, or now that you've sent me these resources, you don't have to send me a list again. We can keep using this list semester after semester. So yeah, focus on whatever sort of positive time savers can come out of it. So, maybe you'll have to kind of learn a new thing now, but down the road, this will make this whole process a lot easier. You'll have to do a lot less work next time.
Thank you. And this next question, I think we have quite a few new schools that have joined us, I'm pretty sure. And so we'd love to know what advice you have for new schools, your best practices, lessons learned, and what advice you'd give to these schools that are just getting started with their outreach journeys.
I would say that, outreach always involves, getting out of the library. Reserve specialists have constantly been talking to faculty over the years and trying to get reserve lists made. So you already have all those contacts and all that conversation already started. And you can just turn that into Leganto conversations and explain the value of Leganto. It's not that much more work. It's a little bit more, but it's not that much more. You're already creating reserve lists. And then also get liaisons to buy in. Liaisons are trusted by faculty members. And it's get them to buy in. It's not that hard. They understand the value of it once you explain it to them. And then, so that's from the library point of view. Get out of the library. Get out of the brick and mortar. Go out there, whether that's for phone, Zoom, I don't care. Get out of the library. Number two, when you're out the library, talk to your student population. I know I keep saying it over and over again, but that's talk to your students, see what your students need, see what the pain points are for your students. And if you can find out what the pain points are for the students, that's an easy way to talk to the faculty and say, this is why we're doing Leganto. This is why we're doing reserve list. And they explain it, then I think the faculty really get it then.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the first thing, getting started with your campus partners, not just making it a library thing or a singular department, but really get the, academic tech specialists on board, IT services. They'll need to kind of know about Leganto and that it exists and how it integrates with the LMS. Just whatever kind of powers you have to communicate with departments outside of the library, that will then be able to communicate with other channels that you sort of don't have direct contact with. So definitely from the very beginning, getting as many people involved in the conversations around promotion and implementation that you can.
I agree with everything that has been said. Definitely get your library liaisons involved. Have them on your implementation teams if you don't already. I was on it with Erin. So right at the beginning, I kind of knew what Leganto was, and I was able to share that with people in my department and get them on board. And then for them to go out to the various colleges and departments on campus. And, those of us who work directly with faculty, we know the faculty that would be the most interested in it. And we were able to tap into those and find those people and get them involved right away in kind of like our beta pool. And that was very helpful. I also think it's helpful to show, to have your examples ready to go. Examples, both like what it looks like within whatever LMS you're using, and what it's going to look like if you're just wanting to build a list and put it out there for the university to use. So having those examples can help with promotion.
And I would like to add one more thing to Evie just reminded me. If you can, at all with the showing examples, try to become an administrator on both the LMS, because that will allow you to actually act as a faculty member. That's key. We didn't figure that out for a while, but if you can be an administrator within the LMS, you're already probably an administrator within your ILS. So that'll help you show the examples.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have my own Canvas sandbox course that I've built out that has a Leganto list attached. So if I'm out working with faculty, I can pull that up real quick, and they've seen Canvas, they know how it works, and they can see it in its own environment.
And on that, here we'll open this up to just questions from our attendees here today. But before that too, I'd like to give the group an opportunity here, all of those that are with us, to just even pop in your favorite go-to tip that's been most effective in terms of outreach and engagement as you've started. What that would be, to pop that in the chat again, just in the conversation, and we'll transition here over to our questions as well. I know we have a couple here. I'll hand it over to Jesse, but again, those two asks for now would be your top tip or trick for engagement. What's been most effective for you, to share that with the group, and then also those questions as they come in.
Sure. So I will start to read you the questions. There are a number of questions here, but if those of you listening have been kind of holding on to your questions or didn't want to stop listening to type, feel free to put in any other questions. We certainly have lots of time. I'm actually going to start with the last one that came in because it kind of ties with what we've just been talking about. But do you recommend admin access to the LMS for liaisons as well?
So I can talk a little bit about this. Yes, I do. We have the ability to request our own. So like I said, I have my own Canvas sandbox that I use, but we also have one that's just for the research and instruction department, where we're all a part of it and we all have admin capabilities. So it's really like we're able to build, besides Leganto lists, we're able to build modules and other things. And it really gives us a sense of what that looks like to faculty and instructors, because we've been in the same environment. So it's very helpful.
Great, thank you. I'll also say I put a question in the chat, which I'm sure that many of you saw, about what language you use to refer to Leganto. I think that all of the comments that came in just came in to me privately, so I just wanted to do a little summary. I hope nobody minds that I'm reading off what you said. First of all, I got a comment that says, we struggle with this currently, so I thought it might be helpful to share some of the things that we did get. Course reading list tool, reading list, library reading list, course materials. So kind of a mix of things around that, in case any of you were curious. So there's that. And then here's another question that came in toward the beginning. At our institution, we have difficulty determining which and how many library stakeholders should have detailed knowledge of Leganto and be prepared to provide direct support to faculty members. Any recommendations or guidelines?
Well, I'm at a smaller school at UMW than Northeastern, and I would say the more the merrier is what I would say, because we're all in the ship together, rowing the same way, hopefully. So like the last question of who should have admin support within, your LMS, I think anyone who's explaining it should have any library stakeholder that's explaining to faculty members how to use Leganto, and even people that sit at the front desk. When a student walks in or a faculty member walks in and says, "What's this Leganto thing?" I think everyone in your library should have a part of this. They should have a role in everything you do, especially when it comes to promoting something the library is providing.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
a fan of that. Sorry, I'll let you join in. Sorry, Erin. I was just going to say, James, I love that last quote of have everybody join in. That's a dream of Betsy and mine to hear something like that. Sorry, go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone at the library, particularly down to just the student at the desk, we want them to at least know that it exists and the very basic, 2 things it can do, something like that. I think the way it kind of works here is that, for the library, maybe there's a Leganto point person who might be me, but we also want to make sure that each one of our liaison librarians has a pretty good knowledge of Leganto. And if they're having issues with it, they might come to me and then I'll kind of get them up to speed. But basically it's, I would say reserves and then the liaison librarians are the main people who work with Leganto. And just kind of as it comes up, we try to get other people in access services and front facing positions to at least kind of know what it is and be able to show someone on the screen what it looks like.
To build on what Erin said, and I just happened to have one of these right next to me. I just thought of it, but we created these like little, oh, it's my screen's blurred, so you can't really see it. We have little postcards that it just says like Leganto, and in the back it has a brief description of what it is. So our student workers or somebody who works at the library who might not be too familiar, they know this exists and they can grab this and hand it to whoever's asking, which makes it easy as well.
Great, thank you. Here's another question for you, Evie. Can Evie talk a bit more about how the library uses Leganto lists to highlight collection resources outside of course reading lists?
Sure. So I'm actually going to put one of our LibGuides that I created into the chat. This is our LibGuide for send. Does not want to send. All right, so that's not working for me. I don't know why it doesn't want to send. But basically, so for our anti-racism guide, we've broken it up into one of the pages is like how to use these resources. And then we have a read, watch, listen section. And in it, we highlight a few of the works, like in our read section. And then it says, to discover more nonfiction books, go here.
You're breaking up a little bit here. Is it just me?
No, I've lost her too, unfortunately. It's that cliffhanger moment. Go
Yes.
here, and I want to know more.
That's like one of the tips that Jackie shared last week about marketing is tell people what to do first. Maybe we can share the link via the email that we'll use for follow-up so everyone will be able to take a look at that. While we wait for her to come back, I will read a comment that I got here. So it says, tip for my ESL department, I purchased multi-user licenses for novels they were using in class, then used that opportunity to show them how to add the book in their Canvas course. They loved it, they got books, and an easier way to make them accessible to students. So that's a really nice example of a very specific way that you can, reach out to faculty and show them the value that Leganto can bring to them. So thank you for sharing that tip. A couple more questions that came in. There is one here. What is your experience with making the link to Leganto always visible in your LMS versus requiring them to activate it or make it visible prior to using?
When we first got started with Blackboard, I remember we had to include in the training, here's how to add Leganto to your menu and then open it. But I think just in meetings with the academic tech folks, we were able to get them to sort of put it as, a prearranged button in there. And that was really just
It's another cliffhanger for me. I don't know about everybody else, but it's happening.
I would say what we did here at UMW is we got it so that it's already there. They don't have to add it at all. They do have to activate it, but it's in every single, Leganto is in every single LMS page. It's there. The hard problem we have, and if anybody can ever figure this out, I would love to hear it. How do we get it on and within Canvas is the LMS we use. It's like the second, the third last option tab. We want them to move it up and we know that we can get them to actually move it up, but we can't get we can't get it automatically in the top 5 or 6. It just sits at the bottom, and until a faculty member moves it up, we can't get it up higher.
I love that question. That was actually one I started working with Jesse, that's one of the first things I said is, can we shift this up?
Why is it at the
And
bottom?
yes, why is it at the bottom? And part of that, I don't know if I have the answer, but maybe it could be plugged into the LibGuide so professors actually know, because it depends too. I'm a former instructor, not everyone knows how to navigate that pain as to have that option to shift things around. Some people just think it's going to be that, there's no flexibility. But if you're familiar with options, then you realize I can shift this up and I can hide this, that, and the other. But would love to hear from the rest of the group if they have experience as well. I know, Erin, you're back with us too to share a bit about that experience. We were left hanging there in terms of what your experience has been and the advice you'd like to share. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Was this for the LMS button question?
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't aware when I went off. But yeah, basically we used to have to include that as part of a training to add the button. But now that we've sort of been in contact with people who manage Canvas, we've been able to ask them to move that button up, make it a default setting for each course page.
I actually have a couple comments in the chat from people who have to add it manually. So it sounds like working very closely with the people who manage the learning management system and helping them see the value of Leganto and why it's important to have this by default is probably the only way to get this done. Would you agree? Is there anything else that either of you want to say about that?
I'd say it's almost critical to have that in there, because if not, you got to get even more buy-in from the. I mean, students will stumble upon the Leganto. They'll stumble upon it, and they'll tell other students. So I think it's, and then once you don't have it, it's glaring when one class has it and another class doesn't have it. Then you get even more questions. So I think work with your Canvas person or your LMS person and try to get it in there defaultedly, like Erin said.
Great, thank you. We are very new to Leganto. How did you choose who to approach for your pilot group?
So for me in particular, it was just faculty I had like a good relationship with in terms of course reserves, like people who just had kind of a good rapport with, who I thought their personality and the way they've worked with me in the past, they would be open to trying something like this. And we don't force it on them. We just ask them, hey, would you be interested in being in a pilot? And so, yeah, that was just kind of based on kind of personal relationships in my case.
Yeah, we picked, I personally picked 5. 3 that I knew were going to do it no matter what, because they're amazing library users, and 2 that I thought that would say no, because they didn't even use Canvas. And then the other 5, we had the liaisons reach out and grab one. We asked them for their input. And what's my favorite part is the 2 that started out not using Canvas could not live without it right now. So that's the best story about it.
That's really great to hear.
Oh.
The last thing I think is maybe not a question for today, but there is a question here if the panelists would mind sharing their surveys. And maybe this is also a question for Amy and Betsy if we have surveys that we can share. It sounds like there would be, that'd be a helpful thing for people.
Yeah. We do have surveys that we can share with the group, and then we'll follow up with panelists too to see if they're willing to share their resources as well and include that in the follow-up email that we send out today, or not today, but after today, I should say.
Yes, and if I'm your campus engagement manager, you can shoot me an email and I'll be happy to help too.
All right, well, those are all the questions that I see. I hope I haven't missed anybody, but that's everything that I can see so far.
Yeah.
Jesse, I have a question real quick.
Yes.
For Erin, you mentioned Leganto. You use Leganto in your LibGuides. How exactly do you do that? Is it just like the LMS? Because we've never thought about doing this. This is a great idea.
Evie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I use it to link out to more resources. So instead of like listing, 30 books about a topic that makes your LibGuides look cluttered and messy, I'll put 3. I'll put a link that says go here. And then you click on that, go here button. It takes you into Leganto and shows you everything that is available. And I also have on the Leganto, kind of like under the under the title of the page, I put, you know, if there's anything missing, you can contact me and I will add it to this list. So, and I've also used Leganto with like our student cultural centers to build a list, and then we'll create a bit.ly link that'll take them to the list. We did that. I did that with our disability resource center. They were doing a week, and they wanted to link out to a bunch of different movies that we had within one of our collections, and we created the link, and they were able to send that out to their students. So it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a class.
I will say that's really interesting, and if you'd be willing to share a couple of those links, we'd really appreciate it. I do see that you put the one in the chat, and I know we'll be in touch here after this session, and we can share more of those materials with those that have attended today. I will say thank you to everyone. We've had a lot of great questions come in, and I've learned a lot from all of you, your experiences, your expertise, and so just want to say thank you on behalf of Ex Libris, and also thank you to all of you that have attended here today with these, or to hear from your colleagues here and learn more about their Leganto adoption journeys. We'll just ask that you just put those questions in the chat or reach out to us directly, Betsy and myself, should you have any questions. And we just want to let you know that we will follow up with this recording as well as some of these resources we mentioned here today shortly. And we'll be in touch soon. So thank you all again for attending. We hope that you enjoy your afternoons. Thanks for joining this Fireside chat today, and we look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Bye.